Welcome to Sleepy Classic Tales. Today we listen to a calm summary of a short, yet exceptionally dense story. The Shot, written by Alexander Pushkin and first published in 1831. A tale about honor, patience, and the destructive power of a postponed moment. The narrator recalls his time as a young officer stationed in a remote garrison. Life there is monotonous, shaped by routine, camaraderie, and minor rivalries. Entertainment is rare, and any deviation from the ordinary immediately attracts attention. In this setting, one man stands out in particular: Silvio. Silvio is older than most of the officers, taciturn, withdrawn, marked by a somber presence. No one knows exactly why he lives there. He does not truly belong, rarely participates in social life, and yet always seems present. What makes him famous, however, is his extraordinary skill with the pistol. He shoots with a precision that astonishes even experienced duelists. Despite this superiority, Silvio challenges no one. He avoids duels, withdraws from provocations, swallows insults that others would long since have answered with a weapon. This behavior appears strange, almost cowardly, and yet does not fit the impression his abilities convey. One day, an incident occurs. A young, wealthy count joins the garrison. He is confident, carefree, popular, and soon becomes the center of society. Between him and Silvio, a quiet tension arises. At a dinner, the Count makes a casual, disparaging remark about Silvio. It is not an open insult, but clear enough. Everyone expects a reaction. Yet Silvio remains silent. He stays calm, almost indifferent. The Count laughs as though he has won, and the matter seems closed. For the other officers, however, this silence is incomprehensible. They begin to doubt Silvio's honor. Later, Silvio confides something to the narrator. He explains that he has every reason to challenge the Count to a duel, but he does not wish to shoot. Not yet. His life, he says, is bound to a single shot, and that shot must not be wasted. These words remain in the narrator's memory. Shortly afterward, the Count leaves the garrison. Life continues, the memory fades. Silvio remains behind, quiet, waiting, unchanged. Years pass without anyone understanding what truly drives him, but the shot of which Silvio spoke has not been forgotten. It has merely been postponed. Years later, the narrator once again thinks of Silvio. The time at the garrison lies long behind him, yet the enigmatic words about the single postponed shot have stayed with him. One day, while traveling through a remote region, he happens to hear a familiar name. Silvio still lives, withdrawn, unchanged. Curious, the narrator seeks him out. Silvio receives him kindly but reservedly. He lives simply, almost poorly, without signs of ambition or social striving. Yet nothing in his character has altered. The same calm, the same inner tension rests in his gaze, and his skill with the pistol remains unbroken. In conversation, the narrator finally raises the subject that has preoccupied him for years: the Count. The duel that never took place, the shot that is still outstanding. Silvio does not hesitate long. He explains that he once challenged the Count to a duel before the latter's time in the garrison. At that time, Silvio himself was young, proud, sensitive in matters of honor. The Count had deeply offended him, and the duel had become inevitable. But when they faced each other, something unexpected occurred. The Count showed no fear. While Silvio burned inwardly with hatred and tension, the Count remained calm, almost indifferent. He ate cherries, joked, waited without the slightest nervousness for the shot. This attitude struck Silvio harder than any insult. His opponent did not fear death, and therefore Silvio had no power over him. Silvio did not fire. He declared the duel interrupted and reserved his right to the shot for later. Not out of mercy, but calculation. He wanted to wait until the Count had something to lose, until life meant something to him. Only then, Silvio said, would the shot have meaning. Since then, he has lived in this waiting. The narrator is shaken. He realizes that Silvio's entire existence is defined by this single moment. Everything else, friendships, career, happiness, seems secondary to him. His life has narrowed to a single point, to one action in the future. Silvio speaks of it calmly, without bitterness, almost matter-of-factly. Yet this very calm reveals how deeply the matter governs him. The narrator understands that Silvio does not wait in order to live. He lives in order to wait. And somewhere out there, the Count continues his life, now wealthy, married, respected, exactly as Silvio had foreseen. The moment draws nearer. Sometime after meeting Silvio again, the narrator's life leads him elsewhere. He has settled down and now moves in better circles. On a country estate, he becomes acquainted with a wealthy man, a count who carries himself with ease, composure, and visible contentment. Soon the narrator recognizes who he is. It is the same count of whom Silvio spoke. The man lives in prosperity, is married, owns a large estate, and enjoys respect. Everything about him suggests that he has arrived. His life appears complete, secure, free from the risks of youth. This very condition grants him a calm that borders on carelessness. A friendly relationship develops between the narrator and the Count. In conversations about earlier times, the subject of duels arises. The Count casually recounts an old episode that amuses him more than it moves him. He speaks of a duel that was never concluded, of an opponent who postponed his shot. The narrator listens attentively. The Count laughs at the memory. For him, it was an episode without consequence. He speaks of the boldness of his youth, of the indifference toward death that once distinguished him. He mentions Silvio's name, not with hatred, but with a certain condescension. The narrator realizes that the Count feels secure, that he believes the past lies behind him, and that he cannot imagine someone having taken his words seriously for years. But this certainty begins to crumble. One day the Count receives a letter. He reads it and turns pale. His habitual composure gives way to a moment of unrest he can scarcely conceal. When asked, he reacts evasively, attempts to end the conversation. Later he confesses what has happened. Silvio has found him, and he now demands the postponed shot. The Count is forced to face the duel, not as a young man to whom life is indifferent, but as a husband, a landowner, someone bearing responsibility. This change makes all the difference. For the first time in many years, the Count feels fear. He knows he cannot evade it. The old promise, which he himself never took seriously, is now being claimed. The past has caught up with him, precise, patient, relentless. The narrator realizes that Silvio's plan has succeeded. The shot was never forgotten. It merely waited for the right moment. The day of the duel arrives sooner than the Count would like. Though he strives to maintain his composure, a palpable unease surrounds him. The narrator observes how much his demeanor has changed. The once self-assured man now seems cautious, almost tense. The past he had recently laughed about has become a real threat. The Count openly admits that the situation torments him. Not only the fear of death, but the realization that someone has worked toward this moment for years. That a life was shaped by revenge and patience, and now demands its price. When Silvio appears, his bearing is calm, almost businesslike. He does not seem hateful, not agitated. For him, this moment is not an outburst of emotion, but the fulfillment of a long-prepared plan. The roles have shifted. The once carefree Count is nervous. Silvio, by contrast, controls every movement. The conditions of the duel are established. Silvio insists that the Count fire first. He wishes to prolong the moment. He wants to see what it is like when the other now hesitates, when death is no longer indifferent. The Count raises the pistol. His hand trembles slightly. The shot is fired and narrowly misses Silvio. The bullet strikes the wall. Now it is Silvio's turn. He steps closer, calmly raises the weapon and aims at the Count. In this instant, everything has been achieved that he once desired. The Count stands, pale, tense, full of fear. He knows his life now depends on a single finger. Silvio hesitates, not from uncertainty, but from intention. He regards the Count for a long time. Then he lowers the weapon. He declares that the purpose of the duel has been fulfilled. He has seen what he wished to see. The Count now had something to lose, and he felt it. The shot is withheld once more. For a moment, there is complete silence. The Count is stunned. He had expected anything but this. Silvio, however, seems relieved, as though with this decision a burden has fallen from him. He leaves without turning back. The narrator understands that Silvio did not come to kill. He came to regain power, to experience the moment once denied him. Yet whether this victory frees him or binds him irrevocably remains open. For the shot that never rang out has nevertheless changed everything. After Silvio leaves, the Count remains motionless. The immediate danger has passed, yet relief does not come. Instead, a feeling of emptiness spreads. The moment that could have ended his life did not, and precisely for that reason, it lingers. The Count attempts to return to normality. He speaks little of the duel, avoids explanations. Outwardly, everything appears as before. But inwardly, something has shifted. The former carelessness has vanished. The thought of death, once mocked, is now part of his daily awareness. The narrator also senses that the event is not simply concluded. He realizes that the true duel did not take place when the pistols were raised, but over the course of years. Silvio's patience, his waiting, his renunciation of everything else, all this was part of the struggle. Silvio himself remains a mysterious figure to the narrator. He obtained what he wanted, and yet his victory seems strangely incomplete. He exercised power without carrying it to the extreme. He consciously refrained from killing, and thereby proved his superiority. Yet this superiority has its price. The narrator wonders what becomes of a man who directs his life so consistently toward a single purpose. Whether such a victory truly liberates or binds the victor to the moment he brought about. Silvio's life now appears as empty as before, only without the open claim to the single shot. The Count, for his part, continues to live, but no longer lightly. The thought that someone was willing to wait years merely to grant him a moment of fear does not leave him. He understands that some decisions do not expire. Two life concepts stand opposed. one that postpones everything in order to gain power, and another that risks everything because it believes it has nothing to lose. Both are marked. The narrator recognizes that this duel produced no clear winner. It merely revealed how profoundly honor, pride, and patience can shape and limit a person's life. The shot was withheld, yet its effect continues to resonate. After the duel, the paths of those involved separate for good. The narrator leaves the Count's estate with the feeling of having witnessed something fundamental, not a struggle over life and death, but a struggle over meaning, over the attempt to grant a life significance after the fact. Of Silvio, he hears little. Rumors reach him. It is said that Silvio later joined a military conflict voluntarily, again sought proximity to danger. Whether from boredom, habit, or the need to give his life direction once more remains unclear. The narrator wonders whether, after the withheld shot, Silvio even knew what he was living for. The purpose that sustained him for years had been fulfilled, yet nothing new took its place. The tension that carried his life had vanished. What remained was the memory of a single moment that had defined everything. The Count, too, remains changed. He never speaks of the duel again. To outsiders, his life appears orderly, successful, calm. Yet in later encounters, the narrator perceives a new caution in his behavior, a seriousness that was not there before. As though he has understood that indifference toward death is not strength, but a lack of imagination. Both men obtained what they wanted, and yet not what they needed. The narrator draws no simple lesson. He understands that time can be a weapon, that patience can be more powerful than anger, and that a postponed decision can sometimes change more than an immediate act. The shot that never rang out proves stronger than many that were heard. And perhaps therein lies the true cruelty of the story, that it is not the deed that determines life, but the waiting for it. Years later, the narrator looks back on the events with distance. The story of Silvio and the Count has imprinted itself on his memory, not because of danger or weapons, but because of the inner consequences it left behind. No blood was shed, and yet the lives of all involved were irreversibly altered. Silvio has vanished. It is said that he fell in a later war, somewhere far away, without witnesses, without significance for the world. Whether these rumors are true, no one knows. Yet the thought seems consistent to the narrator. Silvio was a man who oriented his life toward a single moment. Once that moment had passed, nothing remained to which he could hold fast. The Count continues to live. His life proceeds in order, successful, outwardly unharmed. Yet the former lightness is gone. The narrator recognizes that the Count has learned something essential, that life is not self-evident, and that indifference toward death is not superiority, but blindness. The decisive shot never took place, and precisely in that lies its power. It was never meant to strike a body, but a consciousness. Silvio did not wish to kill. He wished to be seen. He wanted his opponent to experience the moment he himself had once endured, and this aim he achieved. Thus the story ends without clear victors. Both men lost something, both understood something, and both reached a point at which it becomes evident that honor, pride, and patience do not guarantee a fulfilled life. The narrator remains with the insight that some decisions derive their weight not from action, but from restraint. that a postponed shot can sometimes destroy more than a fired one, and that time itself can become the sharpest weapon if held long enough. And with that, our story for today comes to an end. A story about patience, honor, and the power of a moment that never arrives. Perhaps you are now wondering, how strongly does this calm, short version differ from Pushkin's concise, almost ironic original? What role did duels and codes of honor truly play in that era? And why were men willing to risk their lives over seemingly minor slights? And how typical is this story, considering that Alexander Pushkin himself was part of that code of honor, and later died in a duel? We explore these and other questions in our accompanying book, Golden Pages, Volume 2. There we place the shot in its historical and psychological context, explain the dueling practices of the time, and show why this story is far more than a conflict between two men. You will find the link in the description. For today, you may simply let the story settle. Let your thoughts slowly come to rest. And if you like, we will listen together again tomorrow. Good night.